I never planned to notice it. It wasn't something I was looking for. But once I saw it, once the pattern emerged, it was impossible to ignore. Every evening, around the same time, she'd grab her keys from the counter and leave. She wouldn't say much, just a quick "I'll be back in a bit," or running a quick errand, delivered so casually that at first, I didn't think twice. I mean, who was I to question where she was going? People run errands. They go for walks. They grab a coffee. Nothing unusual about that. But then I started noticing the timing. It was always right before the end of a certain someone's shift. The first time, I thought it was coincidence. The second time, it raised an eyebrow. By the third, I couldn't deny it anymore. It wasn't a random trip to the store, or a spur-of-the-moment craving for ice cream. It was deliberate. It was calculated. She left just before he clocked out, as if she knew exactly when to go so their paths would cross. I told myself I was imagining things. People's schedules overlap all the time. And yet, there was something in her manner, subtle but telling, that made my stomach tighten. The way she checked her phone right before heading out. The way she seemed more careful with her appearance on those evenings. It wasn't obvious, not at first, but once I picked up on it, the signs were there. I started to wonder if she was even aware of what she was doing. Was this some unconscious routine, or was it something more deliberate? And if it was deliberate, what did that mean? I found myself watching the clock, anticipating that moment when she'd grab her purse, sling her jacket over her shoulder, and walk out the door. The tension in the air was almost palpable, at least to me. She seemed oblivious. The real tipping point came one Friday. It had been a long week, and I was already feeling on edge. I noticed her checking her phone around 6, the same time she always did. I glanced at the clock, 6:12. His shift ended at 6:30. I didn't say anything. I just watched as she casually ran her fingers through her hair, grabbed her keys, and said, "I'll be back soon." I waited for her to leave, then did something I'd never done before. I followed her. Not closely, not enough to be seen, but enough to confirm what I'd been suspecting. I watched as she drove the familiar route, passing our usual grocery store, the pharmacy, and the cafe we sometimes went to on weekends. She wasn't stopping at any of them. Instead, she pulled into a small parking lot next to a building I didn't recognize. I parked across the street, my heart racing. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I couldn't look away. She got out of the car, smoothed her jacket, and walked toward the building's side entrance. I stayed in my car, staring, willing myself to turn around and leave, to pretend I hadn't seen any of this. But I couldn't. A few minutes later, the side door opened, and he stepped out. I recognized him instantly. Tall, dark hair, sharp jawline. He looked like the kind of guy you'd see on a movie poster, the kind of guy who'd get the girl in the end. Except he wasn't a movie star. He was just a guy I'd seen before, someone I knew only in passing. And now, he was standing there, just a few feet away from her, smiling in a way that made my stomach churn. She smiled back. It wasn't the kind of smile she gave me. It was softer, warmer, like it belonged to a part of her I hadn't seen in a long time. They exchanged a few words I couldn't hear. She laughed. He laughed. Then they started walking toward the parking lot together. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. Drive away? Get out and confront them? Call her, pretend I didn't know what was happening, and ask where she was? I stayed in the car, frozen, as they reached his vehicle. He opened the door for her, and she climbed in without hesitation. They drove off together, leaving me sitting in the darkness, staring at the empty spot where their cars had been. My mind raced with 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Where were they going? How long had this been happening? Was I just now seeing what had been in front of me all along? I drove home in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound. The house felt colder when I walked in. Her absence was no longer casual or coincidental. It was deliberate, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. For the first time, I wasn't just wondering. I was certain. The following day, I convinced myself that confronting her would only make things worse. What would I even say? "Hey, I followed you last night and saw you leave with some guy?" Just the thought of it made my chest tighten. I knew how it would sound, paranoid, accusatory, like I was grasping at something that might not even be there. But every time I tried to push it from my mind, the memory of her smile, the one she had reserved for him, came rushing back. Instead of speaking up, I watched. I waited. I looked for patterns I hadn't noticed before. And they were there, if I paid close enough attention. On certain evenings, she seemed more restless. She'd hover by the window, glance at her phone more often, linger in front of the mirror before leaving. I'd ask her where she was headed, and her answers were always so casual. "Oh, just picking up a few things. I might grab a coffee. Not sure yet, just need to get out of the house for a bit." Each time, her tone was light, her expression open, as if there wasn't a single reason to question her. I started keeping track. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other Friday. Those were the nights she left. Always just before his shift ended, always with that same carefree attitude. And every time, she came home as if nothing had happened, setting down her keys, saying hello like she'd just been running errands, no different than any other evening. But something had changed. I couldn't relax around her anymore. Every conversation felt forced, every moment together felt strained. I found myself searching for clues in the smallest details. The scent of her hair when she walked in, the tone of her voice when she answered my questions, the way she looked at me, or avoided looking at me. The more I noticed, the harder it became to keep quiet. One Thursday, she left later than usual. Her phone had buzzed a few times before she grabbed her coat and said, "I'll be back soon." I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me as I watched her walk out the door. This time, I didn't follow. I stayed home, sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at the door as if my gaze alone could will it to open. Minutes turned into hours, and the silence grew heavier. My mind filled in the gaps, playing out every possible scenario, none of them good. When she finally returned, it was past midnight. She walked in quietly, not bothering to turn on the light. I pretended to be asleep, listening to the soft rustle of her coat as she hung it up, the clink of her keys on the counter. She moved carefully, as though trying not to wake me, but I could feel her presence. She stood there for a moment, and I could sense her watching me, though I didn't dare open my eyes. After a long pause, she sighed softly and went to the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling. I wanted to ask her where she'd been, what had kept her so long, but I couldn't find the words. The air between us had changed, even if she pretended it hadn't. In the days that followed, I tried to act normal. I smiled when she made a joke, nodded when she talked about work, laughed at the same shows we always watched. But inside, I was crumbling. I needed to know what was going on, needed to understand what had shifted in our lives. The thought of losing her, of hearing her say that there was someone else, made my chest ache. I didn't want to know, but at the same time, I couldn't live in this uncertainty. Another Friday rolled around, and like clockwork, she left just before his shift ended. This time, I didn't follow her. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the screen of my phone, the rideshare app open. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the button to request a car. I could follow her again, see where she went, confirm my suspicions. But what would that accomplish? If I already knew the answer, why did I need to see it again? She came back 2 hours later, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her smile bright. "I found the cutest little shop," she said, pulling a small bag from her coat pocket. "I picked up some coffee beans for us." I forced a smile, nodding as I took the bag from her. "Sounds great." She leaned over, kissed my cheek, and headed toward the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the bag in my hands. It was so normal, so mundane, yet it felt like a piece of evidence, something I'd eventually have to confront her with. The longer I sat there, the more I realized I couldn't keep this up. I couldn't keep watching her leave, keep pretending I didn't see the truth right in front of me. If I didn't say something soon, I was going to lose myself in this constant guessing, this endless spiral of doubt and fear. I set the bag down on the counter and took a deep breath. Next time, I told myself, I'd confront her. Next time, I wouldn't let her walk out that door without asking where she was really going. The following Tuesday, I made up my mind, I wouldn't let her leave without saying something. No more pretending. No more quietly watching her slip away. I needed to know what was going on, even if it meant shattering the fragile peace we'd been clinging to. She was in the kitchen, humming softly to herself as she poured tea into her favorite mug. The clock read 6:15. His shift ended in 15 minutes. My hands were damp, and I could feel my heart pounding. I stood in the doorway, unsure how to begin. She looked so calm, so normal, like any other evening. But I knew the moment I opened my mouth, the facade would crack. She glanced up and smiled. "Hey, want some tea?" I shook my head. "No, thanks." She stirred her tea, the spoon clinking softly against the ceramic. "I'm just going to step out for a bit. Shouldn't be long." There it was. The same casual line she always used. I took a deep breath. "Why do you always leave around this time?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. She blinked, clearly caught off guard. What do you mean? I stepped closer, my palms sweating. Every Tuesday and Thursday. And some Fridays. You always leave right before his shift ends. Why? Her smile faltered. His shift, she repeated, her tone cautious. You know who I'm talking about, I said quietly. You time it perfectly, every time. She looked away, her hand tightening around the mug. You're imagining things. No, I'm not. My voice was firmer now. I've seen it. I've noticed the pattern. So tell me the truth, what's going on? She set the mug down and leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. For a long moment, she said nothing. I could see the wheels turning in her head, as if she were weighing her options. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost apologetic. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I said. Because right now, it looks like you're going to see someone. It looks like you're waiting for him to get off work. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of something, guilt? Sadness? I couldn't tell. I'm not seeing anyone, she said firmly. You have to believe me. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her more than anything. But the evidence didn't add up. Then why the timing? Why always right before he's done for the day? She hesitated, then sighed, her shoulders slumping. I've been meeting someone, she admitted, her words careful. But it's not what you think. My stomach twisted. Who? A friend, she said quickly. Just a friend. I swear. What friend? I pressed. Why haven't you told me about this before? It's complicated, she said. It's someone from work. We've been meeting up to talk about stuff. Personal stuff. But it's nothing romantic, I promise. The explanation felt thin. I wanted to trust her, but the secrecy, the way she timed her departures so perfectly, it didn't feel like the actions of someone with nothing to hide. Why not just tell me? I asked. Why all the sneaking around? I didn't want you to worry, she said. I thought you'd misunderstand. But now it looks worse, doesn't it? It does, I said honestly. Because it feels like you've been lying to me. I haven't been lying, she said, her voice rising slightly. I just didn't know how to explain it. You've been so stressed lately, and I didn't want to add to it. That's all. I searched her face, looking for the truth. There was a sincerity in her eyes, but it was tangled up with something else, fear, maybe. I want to believe you, I said finally. But this doesn't make sense. It's not what you think, she repeated, her voice trembling. You have to trust me. Trust. The word hung heavy in the air. I nodded slowly, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Okay, I said. But no more secrets. If you're meeting someone, I need to know who and why. Otherwise, I can't trust you. She nodded, her expression solemn. No more secrets. But as she reached for her mug again, I couldn't shake the feeling that she still wasn't telling me everything. And deep down, I knew this conversation wasn't over. It was only the beginning. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head. I wanted to believe her, truly, I did. But the details still gnawed at me, leaving a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. It's not what you think, she had said, over and over again. But then, what was it? She promised me there would be no more secrets. She told me she'd be open, that I had nothing to worry about. Yet, each time she grabbed her keys and walked out the door, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. My brain raced, running through possibilities, questioning everything. Was it really just a friend? Was she telling me the whole truth? And why did it still feel like something was off? I told myself to give her the benefit of the doubt, to stop overthinking. But I couldn't help it. The pattern was still there, no matter what she said. And so, one evening, when she stepped out again, right on schedule, I did something I hadn't done since the first time I followed her. I waited for a few minutes, grabbed my coat, and left the house. This time, though, I didn't follow her car. I knew where she was going, and I wanted to get there first. I arrived at the small cafe where I'd seen her with him before. It was quiet, tucked away on a side street, a place you'd only know about if someone told you. As I parked and stepped out, the cool night air hit me. My stomach churned with nerves, but I was determined to finally get some answers. I slipped inside and took a seat at the back, far enough away that I wouldn't be immediately noticed. I scanned the room. It was mostly empty, just a few scattered customers, a couple sitting by the window, and a lone man sipping coffee at the counter. The man I'd seen before. The one whose shift always seemed to end just before she left the house. He was there, and she hadn't arrived yet. My heart pounded. Maybe this was my chance to get a straight answer. I stood, walked to the counter, and ordered a coffee. The man glanced at me briefly, then returned to staring at his phone. I slid into a seat a few stools away, close enough to speak if I wanted to, but not so close that it felt intrusive. I sipped my coffee, waiting. He didn't seem to notice me, which was fine. I wasn't sure what I would say anyway. I just wanted to see what would happen. Would she show up? Would they sit together and talk? Would she see me and realize I was there? I didn't know what I was hoping for, only that I needed to see it for myself. Minutes passed. Then the door opened, and she walked in. My stomach clenched. She looked around, smiled faintly when she saw him, and made her way to his table. She didn't seem nervous or secretive. If anything, she looked relieved. I watched as she sat down across from him, her shoulders relaxing as they started to talk. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke volumes. She leaned forward slightly, her expression earnest, while he nodded, occasionally gesturing with his hands. There was an ease between them that didn't feel romantic, but it didn't feel entirely platonic either. It was familiar. Comfortable. I debated approaching them, but what would I even say? I wasn't supposed to be here. She had told me the truth, or at least part of it. She was meeting him, but not for the reasons I'd feared. Still, my mind raced with questions. What was this personal stuff they needed to talk about? Why did she time it so perfectly, leaving just as his shift ended? Why hadn't she told me sooner? I stayed at the counter, watching as their conversation continued. She laughed at something he said, and he smiled, a warm, genuine smile. It was a small moment, one that shouldn't have mattered, but it stuck with me. It wasn't the smile of someone trying to steal my partner. It was the smile of someone who cared, deeply, about her. I thought about the nights when she'd come home late, her eyes tired but her mood lighter. She told me she was fine, that she wasn't hiding anything, and I'd wanted so badly to believe her. Now, seeing her here, I realized she hadn't been lying. Not exactly. She wasn't sneaking off to have an affair, but she was still keeping something from me, something important. I wanted to stand up and demand answers. I wanted to march over to their table and ask her why she hadn't trusted me enough to tell me everything. But I didn't. Instead, I sat quietly, sipping my coffee, and watched. Watched as they talked, as their words seemed to weigh heavy between them, as she reached across the table and placed a hand on his arm. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't flirtatious. It was compassionate. When she finally left, she didn't notice me. She walked out the door, her step steady, her expression calm. I waited a few more minutes, then got up and left as well. I drove home in silence, the image of them at that table replaying in my mind. When I walked through the front door, she was already in the living room, her coat draped over the back of the couch. She smiled at me as I entered, her eyes soft and warm. "Hey," she said. "How was your night?" I stared at her for a moment, wondering if I should tell her where I'd been. But I didn't. I just smiled back, sat down next to her, and tried to make sense of the knot in my chest. I had seen her with him. I had seen their conversation. And yet, I still didn't have the answers I needed. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spinning in endless loops. I had seen them together. I had watched them talk. I had seen the way she leaned in, the way her expression softened, the way he listened intently. It wasn't romantic, but it wasn't meaningless either. It was personal, intimate in a way that made my stomach tighten with doubt and unease. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed a tune, and sat at the table flipping through a magazine. I watched her from across the room, wondering how she could be so at ease. Didn't she know I had followed her? Didn't she sense my worry, my confusion? Or had she convinced herself that her explanation was enough? I couldn't let it go. I tried to bring it up casually, to test the waters. "What were you and that friend talking about last night?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She glanced up, her expression neutral. "Oh, just some stuff he's going through," she said. "I'm trying to help him out." "What kind of stuff?" I pressed. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Work stuff. Some personal issues. Nothing major." Her answer felt rehearsed, like something she'd said before. I nodded, pretending to accept it, but inside, my doubts grew. If it was nothing major, why all the secrecy? Why the perfectly timed departures? Why the shift in her mood every time she came home from those meetings? Days passed, and the pattern continued. She'd leave right before his shift ended, spend an hour or two out, and return as if nothing had changed. I stopped following her. I stopped waiting by the window, stopped pacing the kitchen. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time she walked out the door, my chest tightened, and every time she came back, I felt no closer to the truth. One evening, after another one of her quick trips, I finally decided to confront her outright. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when I sat down beside her. I didn't mince words. "I need to know what's really going on," I said. "I need you to tell me the truth." She looked up, startled, then set her phone down. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," I said. "I know about him. I know you've been meeting with him regularly. I know you leave at the same time every night. So just, tell me what's really happening. No more vague answers." Her face shifted, a mix of frustration and sadness. "I already told you," she said. "It's nothing romantic. He's just a friend." "Then why didn't you tell me about it from the start?" I asked. "Why the secrecy?" She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't want to worry you. I didn't think it was a big deal." "It clearly is," I said. "If it wasn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't have spent weeks wondering what was going on. I wouldn't feel like I've been left in the dark." She looked away, staring at the coffee table. "You're right," she said quietly. "I should have told you." "So tell me now," I said, my voice softening. "Just tell me the whole truth. No more half answers." She took a deep breath, then met my eyes. "He's going through a tough time," she said. "A divorce, custody issues, financial stress. He doesn't have anyone else to talk to, and I guess I felt like I could help. I didn't want you to think I was spending all this time with another man and get the wrong idea. So I kept it to myself. I thought it would be easier that way." Her words hit me like a wave. A divorce. Custody issues. Financial stress. It wasn't what I had feared. It wasn't romantic. But it was still personal, still something she had kept from me. I nodded slowly, trying to process what she was saying. "Why him?" I asked. "Why do you feel responsible?" "He's an old friend," she said. "We've known each other for years. I felt like I owed it to him to help, to be there for him. But I see now that I should have been honest with you. I never wanted you to feel like I was hiding something." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of relief. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't ideal. But at least it was the truth, or close enough to it. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the regret in her voice. She had made a mistake, and she was admitting it. "I just need you to trust me," she said. "I know I should have told you sooner, but it wasn't because I was doing anything wrong. I was just trying to handle it on my own." I nodded again, letting her words sink in. "Okay," I said finally. "But no more secrets. If something's going on, I want to know. Even if it's hard, even if you think I won't understand. I'd rather know than wonder." "I understand," she said. "No more secrets." We sat there in silence for a moment, the tension easing slightly. It wasn't perfect. It would take time to rebuild the trust that had frayed over the weeks of doubt and confusion. But it was a start. And for the first time, I felt like we could move forward, together.